partners from Fairfax County and Middletown, Connecticut. MaryAnn Panerelli from Fairfax and Rachel Sadlon from Middletown, and we see people are still joining the webinar, so we're going to give you just another minute before we get started. But thank you, everybody, and we will be right with you. Okay, we're waiting for some folks to join, but while we're doing that, let's take the time, your very valuable time, and go over some of the ground rules for today's presentation. So that's being shared. We will also share slides with you, and you are in listen-only mode because there are way more of you than there are of us. If you would like to ask a question, you have a question dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. If you want to try it out now and just say hi to us, so you have an experience of using that feature. That's how you can ask questions. We won't break. Oh, hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Your names. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so you're going to hear, actually we're kind of going from right to left to center in terms of the order. Again, I'm Jennifer Spiegler from Kognito, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Kognito and what we do here, which will be relevant to what you're going to hear about from MaryAnn Panerelli, who's the Director of Prevention and Intervention at Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia, and Rachel Sadlon, who is the Safe Schools Healthy Students Project Manager in Middletown, Connecticut Public Schools. So let's talk a minute about our sponsor, Kognito. Kognito is a company that develops and distributes online simulations. Our goal is really about enabling positive behavior change through the power of conversations, and those conversations might be about mental health or physical health or social and emotional health. But oftentimes those are difficult conversations to have, but we know when we have them and we have them well, they have the power to improve our lives and our well-being. So today we're talking about our mental health and suicide prevention and early intervention simulations for the K-12 marketplace. Some of these are listed on the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices, and several of them are listed on the SPRC AFSP Best Practices Registry for Suicide Prevention Programs. These are often available at no cost to states and districts through sponsored programs, as they are available in Fairfax and in Middletown through sponsored programs. So if you're not sure whether or not your area has a sponsor and might be available to you at no cost, please drop us a line to info@kognito.com or to me, and my contact information will be available at the end of the presentation. And although this is a very new modality of training that we're going to be talking about, online simulations for educators, I want to mention that we have successfully trained over 200,000 K-12 educators since we've been doing this work over the past 5 or 6 years. in many, many states and jurisdictions. So we're really proud of that and proud of the partners that we've attracted to our to the approach. I thought I had slides on some of our partnerships, but I guess I don't. Just to say that we do partner with a lot of state mental health and education agencies, as well as nonprofit organizations, districts, including New York City, and in addition to work that we've done with SAMHSA and the VA and other federal partners. So I want to talk today a little bit about what's in our portfolio for K-12 schools. We have 5 programs that are professional development for educators. 3 of those are simulations for mental health and suicide prevention under the brand At Risk. These are targeted by grade level, high school, middle school, and elementary school, because those are very different kinds of learners, very different kinds of kids that you would be expected to intervene with. In addition, Step In, Speak Up is for secondary school educators and provides an opportunity to meet LGBTQ youth and to practice reaching out and responding to bullying behaviors and reaching out to victims of bullying. This year we're really excited about a new module that we are going to be releasing in the fall about supporting military kids. In addition, there is a curriculum piece for high school students called Friend to Friend, which has been adopted in several jurisdictions. MaryAnn will talk a little bit about that, I think. And brand new are professional development for nurses and social workers, including screening and brief intervention and mental health modules for those healthcare practitioners and school-based health centers or school nurses and social workers. So what we're talking about and what is so extraordinary about Kognito simulations is that even though they are all taking place online, they give you an opportunity to build skills through role-play conversations. We know that in order for people to change the way they behave, they need practice, and these conversations, which are very realistic and the students present with very realistic challenges, give educators the self-confidence to act when they need to in appropriate ways when they see kids who need help. You can see here the 3 levels of at-risk simulations. At the top is the high school version, where you have 3 students you're going to talk to, Renee, Roberto, and Joey. And instead of talking about diagnoses, we are talking about what a teacher might see. In middle school, you have a bullying scenario and a student who's having difficulty facing the impending death of a relative. And in elementary school, you see a 3rd grader who's become very withdrawn, he's been burned out of his house, and a conversation with a parent. And we know that that can be often anxiety-provoking for teachers. So this really gives them good practice at doing that. And how does this work? And I'm not going to do a demo today. We often do demos on these, but I didn't want to take the time because I want to quickly turn it over to MaryAnn and Rachel. But what happens in this simulation is that the user goes online, they create an account in our system, and they will choose which of our simulations they want to engage in, and there will be some didactic content and best practices delivered by Jackie Torres, who's your virtual coach in the At-Risk series. And she's going to guide the learner, who takes on the role of a teacher. In this case, as you see on your screen, you're looking at Sean Lyons, who's a high school English teacher, who's talking to Renee, who is student who is very, very anxious about her grades, worrying about her assignments, and we have heard that she might be cutting. And for each of the conversations, your virtual coach will help you outline what the goals of the conversation are, and you will proceed to talk with the student using the dialog boxes that you see on your screen, which are topics, and under the topics you have different tactics to try. So in this case, you might want to talk to Renee, and you might decide that you want to ask her how she's doing. And depending on how you ask her, you're going to get a very different experience from Renee, either one that is going to invite you to ask more questions, or one where you are going to have a reaction from her that is going to make you rethink your strategies. So you're getting immediate feedback in many different ways from the simulation, both from the non-player character Renee's voice, her body language, the words she's chosen, and you might also get advice from Jackie, who's going to pop up and let you know whether your strategy was a good one or not a good one. In some of these simulations, you might also have a meter that's going to tell you, reinforce what it is you're trying to achieve, whether that's trust or understanding or confidence. You might also have some hidden thoughts, some thought bubbles that will give you insights into what the non-player character is thinking. So you control the conversation, you choose what your character says, they speak, and the other character responds. And much of what the communication skills are come from evidence-based practices such as motivational interviewing. Both Rachel and MaryAnn will have some data to share about what the outcomes look like for users. Again, this is a modality that might be familiar to you if you are in the military, or you're a pilot, or a surgeon, but not so much if you're a teacher in school. We know that practice is very important. You don't learn to ride a bike or play the cello by watching a video of that. You really need to practice. So these important conversations are intended to give you that practice. And I would like to hand it over right now to Rachel to talk about her project in Middletown Public Schools in Connecticut. Rachel, make sure you're off mute, okay?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Kognito for inviting me on this call today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Rachel Sadlon. I'm the manager of the Safe Schools, Healthy Students project at Middletown Public Schools. And I want to start by giving you an overview just of the community that I work in. Next slide. So Middletown is centrally located in Connecticut, about 16 miles south of Hartford. We're 42 square miles and have a population of over 47,000. Demographically, our census data shows us to be about 25% racial minority and 13% Hispanic or Latino. But what you'll see on the next slide, we're not going there quite yet, but you'll see how this data differs from that of our school district as a whole. So there's some up and coming diversity to our city. The median household income in Middletown is just over $60,000 per year. That's lower than the state average. We're also slightly higher than the state averages for individuals with incomes below the poverty level, for children under the age of 18 below the poverty level, single-parent households, and transiency of residency. So our population faces a lot of the risk factors that come along with low socioeconomic status and perhaps weakened relational bonds that could help refer them to services. We're very diverse in our geography. We're actually a community that's identified by having all three urban, suburban, and rural characteristics. So not only is our population diverse, from one town to the other, we look quite different. And we pride ourselves on being a truly collaborative community with some wonderful resources within our city. So we found ourselves as a city to be really poised for this work. Next slide, please. So Middletown Public Schools has an enrollment of over 4,500 students enrolled in preschool through grade 12. Our district has 8 elementary schools, with no 2 elementary schools really being the same, just given our level of diversity and variance across the city. We do have a 6th grade only middle school and then a 7th and 8th grade middle school. So as a result, our students go through 3 school transitions within 3 years. And this is when we start to see students struggle socially, behaviorally, or emotionally. We also have only 1 high school in the city with approximately 1,200 students. So it is large, and we want to make sure that we're fostering the relationships and the connectedness between our staff and our students, especially in a school that's so big. You'll see that our school-aged population is more racially and ethnically diverse than that of the community, which we saw in our last slide. We're about 50% white, 20% Black or African American, 6% multiracial, and 22% identifying as another race. Our district enrollment is almost 28% Hispanic or Latino, and about half of our students are eligible for free and reduced price school meals. That's just an overview about our school setting. Next slide, please. So in October 2013, Middletown Public Schools was awarded federal funding from the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, their Safe Schools Healthy Students Initiative, or SSHS. This program is currently in 21 districts, representing 7 states. Here in Connecticut, the project is administered through the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services with collaboration from our State Department of Ed. We were awarded $2 million over 4 years to implement strategies to address the 5 SSH elements that you see here. With SAMHSA as the federal funder of this initiative, element 2, promoting mental, emotional, and behavioral health, is our primary focus of the project. So at the end of the 4 years, we hope to report seeing an increase in the number of students receiving school-based mental health services, an increase in the rate of successful referrals to community mental health agencies, and to have 85% of our staff trained in mental health practices. So in addition to Kognito at Risk, we are implementing a number of evidence-based practices through Safe Schools funding, including PBIS and the Coping and Support Training, or CAST, intervention for at-risk high school students. Kognito was recommended to our district by our Safe Schools technical assistance provider, and Sharon Stevens. She comes from the University of Maryland Center for School Mental Health and also serves as a liaison to the National Resource Center for Mental Health Promotion and Youth Violence Prevention. She was the one who introduced us to this, demoed it with us, and really sold us on this training program. Our Safe Schools cohort district in Bridgeport is also using Kognito at Risk as one of their work plan activities. And we also selected it because we felt like it fit in with the Safe Schools strategic approaches of building staff capacity and harnessing really innovative technology. Next slide, please. Here's just some data on the mental health needs in our district. In November, we administered the Walker-McConnell Scale of Social Competence and School Adjustment, or WMS, as a universal screening at 2 of our K through 5 schools. This identified 22% of the elementary students at these schools at risk of mental health problems. And this ultimately resulted in their referral for mental health services that we had right there in the school. This rate of at-risk is also consistent with the rate of students accessing school-based mental health services each year. You'll see there 21.2% of students in grades K through 12 had received at least one school-based mental health service during the academic school year. And this was reported by our school social workers, school psychologists, school-based health centers, school nurses, really everyone who's in that kind of line of duty. And I've also included some information from our Search Institute Attitudes and Behaviors Survey, which we administered in 2012. We're going to be doing this survey again this spring. And we actually had 75% of our students report that they were at least a little sad or depressed in the past month. 25% of our students were saying that they weren't at all sad or depressed at all in the last month. Of those, 16% sad or depressed all or most of the time, and then you see 9% have attempted suicide at least once, 4% have attempted suicide 2 or more times. So I think this data really points to our need and readiness for the Safe Schools funding and to implement the Kognito at-risk modules here in Middletown. Next slide, please. So as I stated before, we're using the whole suite of at-risk modules, the elementary, the middle, and the high school. And although we have on paper a goal of 85% of our staff trained in mental health protocols, we wanted everyone trained. That was our kind of internal goal that we wanted through this grant. So there's a number of reasons why Kognito made the most sense for our district. As we all know, there are a number of challenges with booking professional development time for educators. We had to find a way to work within union contracts and up against all the competing school and district priorities. And here in Middletown, our district PD calendar is set a full year in advance. And really all of the district's professional development time goes to academic curricula. So this really posed an issue with getting that reserved time for a mental health gatekeeper training. In addition, we find that it's difficult pulling teachers from the classroom for trainings and workshops because we often have substitute teacher coverage issues or shortages. So Kognito was ideal due to the shorter training length without compromising on the training quality. What made the most sense was everyone being trained during the opening day of professional development on August 24th, 2015. This day normally includes staff rotated into our computer labs for the mandated training, such as mandated reporting of child abuse, transmission of bloodborne pathogens, all of those things that the teachers need to just check off the list. So what we did was extend the computer lab windows by a little over an hour, allowing staff to take this training also in that given time. We developed a guide for the room facilitator to assist staff with accessing the website, creating an account, launching the course, and we scheduled the day with other workshops to allow staff to rotate in and out of the labs. This ended up being a great way to get 500 certified educators completing the training in one day. We also found that from this training evaluation, many of our staff had no prior suicide prevention training, 96% of middle school staff reporting that and 88% of high school staff. So we didn't really know the true need of this training until Kognito ran the evaluation at the end, and we found that this was something very unfamiliar to our staff. They hadn't taken a course quite like this before. Next slide, please. Here are just a few of the comments from teachers in the course. Simple to use, follow and understand, and informational. Excellent choice of topics relevant to our classrooms to discuss with both student and parent. It had realistic examples that students and teachers face. As a younger teacher, this was a great way to identify both my strengths and weaknesses when communicating with both my students and their parents. And another favorite quote of mine, which isn't here, was a teacher saying that we're not perfect and we sometimes make mistakes, and it was so good to be able to practice skills on a virtual student so that they're better prepared for their next interaction with one of our kids. And that was just so great to hear. Here you'll see our pre and post test among our elementary users. You see an increase in our teachers' abilities to recognize distress and their likeliness to motivate a parent. Next slide. So we've seen some really great outcomes from Kognito's training, and the evaluation questions have really painted a good picture of its value to this district and an increase in the skills upon implementing it. We've been really working to spread the word and expand the training to others. So there's a lot that we've been doing. First, we sent mailings and emails over the summer to community stakeholders and also to our parochial, technical, and magnet schools. We wanted everyone and anyone in this community who comes in contact with our students and their families to be speaking a common language. We didn't feel that just because this was the public schools funding, that this training should only be limited to our own staff. Next, we used professional development time to have our paraprofessional staff trained. And while they were highly engaged in the course, there were some challenges. This group of staff is wonderful in the classroom with our students, but they're not the most computer literate. They're not sitting at a desk in front of a computer all day long. So although I used the projector to demonstrate the necessary steps to sign in, I found that they really needed hands-on assistance with everything from finding the headphone jack to adjusting the computer volume and opening the correct browser. So in hindsight, the training time in the computer lab for those with fewer computer skills should have maybe been a half hour longer, but still the feedback was very positive about the course and the ability to practice on these students. We also promoted the Kognito at-risk training among our central office staff. We allowed them to take the training during their work day, and at the end of a 2-month window, I had the listing of individuals who completed the course from Kognito, and I was able to use these names for raffle items just as an incentive for them taking it. So that helped to drum up some excitement, especially among some people in this building who don't have some regular interaction with our staff, with our students, I'm sorry. And currently we are promoting the training with non-certified staff. So these include our bus drivers, athletic coaches, substitute teachers, and custodial staff. SAMHSA grants allow for stipends of up to $30 per person for program incentive, so we wanted to take advantage of this. We've been providing Visa gift cards as tokens of thanks to those who participate from this list, and in a little over a month we've had 30 more staff trained. The feedback has been wonderful, and many staff members express not having had the opportunity to do a training like this previously. They really saw the value of gaining more information about dealing with students with mental health needs. I think this participation is the most meaningful to me, since these are the staff members that aren't paid the most. They completed the training on their own time, and they just love our students and really care about them. And I think this quote right here is so perfect. This came in an email to me from one of our athletic coaches at the high school, saying that I've coached high school sports for 20 years, and this was the first course of its kind that's been offered to me. The simulation did a great job bringing some clarity to the problems and how to approach them. Teachers and coaches may be the last line of defense against a troubled child hurting themselves or others. As a Middletown alum, I'm proud of the fact that we are doing a great job being proactive and taking care of our kids. So that really speaks to how meaningful and important this can be, just not only with our classroom teachers, but for all staff in the building. And we're really excited to continue partnering with Kognito to bring this training to even more people in our district and community. So thank you.
Hi, this is MaryAnn Panerelli. I'm the Director of Intervention and Prevention Services for Fairfax County Public Schools. I'm going to give you just a little bit of highlights. We can go ahead to the next slide. Fairfax County is at the sort of opposite end of the continuum, if you will, in terms of size of district. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges and what we did about them. We are also, we're 407 square miles, and we are also quite diverse, with almost half of our students coming from homes where English is not the first language spoken, while the second language is most frequently Spanish. We have at least 7 languages that have significant portions of the population speaking, and over 90 languages spoken in the schools. So that impacts some of the work that we do. We can go to the next slide. One of the reasons, and I'm giving you this information because I think one of the things that made Kognito successful in its early implementation days was that there was a lot of political will in our community and with our superintendent for why it was an important thing to do. We have a youth every other year, but we give it every year. And it is data that is then used across our county system, human services systems, as well as the school systems. So everyone was quite aware of the data that we were seeing, with about 1/3 of our kids saying that they had experienced significant levels of feeling sad or hopeless. These questions came from the CDC risk assessment. We included them in our youth survey. So we were having 17% of the kids say that they had considered suicide, and quite a bit of bullying. And then we had some things that were lower than national averages, but still high numbers of kids talking about alcohol and drugs and intimate partner violence, which we later found a connection between some of those things and some suicidal activity. Next slide. We had a very significant increase between 2012 and 2014 in concern about suicide. We had one high school that had had 7 suicides in that 3-year period. And again, we are a school system of 187,000, so we do experience some suicides each year, but to have 7 in one school was highly unusual. And overall, we saw an increase in that 2013 into the fall of 2014 school year. In February of 2014 and in September of 2014, in both of those months, we experienced 4 student deaths to suicide within a month period. So there was a clamor in the community that something be done to address this concern, and there was sort of will and political will across the entire system for support, and for looking for some way not only for schools to be trained, but also for the larger community. So our Community Services Board, which is the mental health agency, the public mental health agency in Virginia, received a grant which made it possible for us to do a few things, one of which was Kognito, but it also allowed us to open a text line instead of a crisis call-in line to have the kids be able to text in. We created some promotional materials. We did a lot of youth-led suicide prevention activities, but one of the largest things that we did, and we did universally, was the Kognito simulations. Next slide. What we did in terms of approach to implementation, again, there's 196 schools in our division, each with a principal who has some control over what the professional development calendar will be, and we find that we have the best uptake when we leave some of choice. So what we said initially was middle and high school teachers and administrators were all expected to complete the Kognito training, but the principal could pick any 3-week period that they wanted to in the first semester. And the kickoff for that 3-week period was to have the psychologists, social workers, and counselors in that building at a faculty meeting introduce themselves to everyone in the building so that they were sure everyone knew who they were, and to introduce what the Kognito program would be like, and also to share with them some activities or some resources that we had that were just within Fairfax County. All of the schools chose a 3-week period. They chose different ones, but they all chose 3-week periods that overlapped with at least one teacher workday. So while the teachers were being told they could do this at any time, if they wanted to do it during a teacher workday, that they could use that time to do it. So they were given any time to do it, and then at the end of the 3 weeks, they were offered a voluntary debrief with the psychologist and social worker. We also utilized PTAs and newsletters to advertise to parents that it was available, and then our various community and county partners were advertising it out to the larger community. Next slide. So at this point, we have 18,000, over 18,000 people in our community have completed it. We did the second year, based on the positive feedback that we got from the middle and high school principals, we were able to get permission to make it mandatory for the elementary school principals, the elementary school administrators and teachers. And you can just see the numbers. Obviously, we have more teachers at the elementary level, about 138 elementary schools, and then we have about 25 high schools and 25 middle schools, and then a variety of special centers. We also did add friend to friend to our suite, and you can see there on the screen the numbers who have now participated in that. We really only revved up talking about that in February and March because our focus in the fall was on the teachers. We have sort of turned over the marketing of that to our student advisory committee, and they're doing a social marketing campaign, a social media campaign, tweeting it, etc., to their friends. They have participated in the training, and we saw a real spike after they started their campaign. I think we had about 200 kids going into February, and we're up to 800 now. The Step In, Speak Up, as Jennifer said, is to intervene when there is some form of harassment around gender identity or sexual orientation. And that is something that we simply said, everyone who has already done the other program, you might be interested in this one too. There's been no mandate to do that, but you can see over 1,000 people have done that at this point. Next one. As we said earlier, the teacher response has really been overwhelmingly positive. For those of you who are district leaders, central office staff, my family calls me dreaded central office staff. For those of you who are in that position, you know that you're often in a position of trying to do some professional development, and people feel that other things would be a better use of their time. In this case, we had 95% plus or minus for different levels, but overall 95% said that they would recommend this training to another teacher. I got emails saying it was the best thing I've ever done. Every new teacher should have this in the first 2 weeks of teaching, etc. It was very, very positive. In addition, through the Kognito surveys, both immediately after people have completed the training and then 3 months later, teachers reported that they felt more confident and competent about how to handle these situations and talking to the youth or to their parents. And we also saw increased rates of actually referring youth to counselors, and increased report that they had spoken with colleagues about these issues when they were concerned about a youth rather than just sort of thinking that someone else would pick it up. Next slide. In terms of our impact, I think that sometimes when you do this kind of training, we're all delighted that the teachers all liked it, but it has been helpful to us as we have tried to get other forms of training and different things in to have this sort of as our social positives. We see high satisfaction. We notice noticeably more referrals. And our private providers have reported that when they call to talk to a teacher about a youth that is in treatment with them, they are noting much more receptivity, much more willingness to collaborate and to talk to the private provider, which was an unexpected consequence. Of course, all that done with parent permission. And that as we're going now into year 3 this coming year, we're really going to focus on our new employees and our students, and then the LGBTQ piece of the professional development. So we continue to be data-driven here, so we will continue to look at the baseline and the referral data to make sure that we have those data points that become persuasive with funders and with our own school board and with our superintendent when we're arguing for this as a good form of professional development. I think we are at the end, yes, so I'm going to, we can take any questions that you have at this point.
Indeed, we can, and I see a lot of people tried out the dialog box, and thank you both, MaryAnn and Rachel. I hope we get some questions rolling in. One question that's come up, as always, somebody asks about the cost, and I guess since I'm the cost person, I'll talk a minute about cost. The cost for these programs is based on, the overall idea is the more users and the more programs you have in your basket, the lower the cost per user. And so there are a lot of economies of scale that we realize and that we pass along to our clients so that they arrive at a very, very low cost per user on a population basis. So, if you're buying these, the retail off-the-shelf price is, in our store, is $28.95 for an hour-long program. But when these get disseminated over districts or states, the cost range on a per user basis might go anywhere from $20 to $25 on down to $2 a head. Really depends on the ability of the the shape of the program in your locality. But as MaryAnn and Rachel both pointed out, this is really a Tier 1 intervention that's designed to refine the safety net. And in both the cases of Fairfax and Middletown, not only were they looking to train all of the educators, but all school staff, ancillary school staff, and even members of the community. And I don't know, Rachel and MaryAnn, if you want to address the cost question, you're welcome to do that.
Yes, I think again, one of the things that makes this somewhat more doable in these tough financial times than it might be otherwise is that given the data that you have available, it has been persuasive to various grants and funders who were willing to give us support. Again, there was quite a bit of political will here already. It does drop the cost significantly as you're going along, and so I'm sure for a division of our size, it may be a different situation than it would be for Rachel's. But we have felt that the people who funded the grant through the Community Services Board and our Community Services Board partners have felt very satisfied with what they got for the money that they had. There really, truly was no other way that I would have been able to reach every teacher with a training that was as personalized as this gets to be, because they are actually interacting. And actually, even just to say we have 16,000 teachers, there would be no way that I could have reached them directly, all of them. And so from that standpoint, the cost alone was not the only factor that we were looking to, but just the ability to, and the flexibility to reach people at different times and on their own preferences.
Yeah. And I think Rachel spoke to this, and I wanted just to bring back the point that the cost for a longer training would mean that you are paying a substitute to be in the class. So if you have a day-long training, for example, you're paying someone to be in the class with students, and that can be prohibitively expensive. Rachel, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we did do 8-hour gatekeep trainings with a cohort of 30 staff from our district, and we found this to be quite cost prohibitive to do on a large scale, because we were kind of directed by union contracts that these individuals would have to be paid above and beyond their school day. So we did them in the evening, paying an hourly rate for the individuals to attend, providing dinner, plus the cost of, I think, $2,000 for the trainer to come in and do that. So when it was all said and done, it was maybe $3,000 to $4,000 for a room of 30 to get trained. And I think this, just the dissemination capability and having it be on demand whenever staff want to access it, and they can go back in. And I know some people who have taken the training over again just because they wanted a refresher themselves. So I think that really adds a lot of value to it being in our district.
Thank you so much. More questions. So I want to say I have a couple of questions from somebody in Texas looking for a free trial and wanting to know if this meets the standards of their suicide prevention legislation. Yes, it meets the standards of your suicide prevention legislation, and it is actually free to you through the MHA of Texas. So if you go to texas.kognito.com, you have free access to elementary, middle, and high school at-risk trainings. So sorry I can't sell this to you, but yay. You're very welcome. A question about the actual program, and I will include a link to a demo in the slides and the recording that you will get a link to, but we'll add a link for the demos as well. So you can actually go in and play with the simulation. So the question is tone of voice, body language, and the actual words used. Those are all components here. You get to choose from your menu what you want the teacher to say, and there's some strategy to that, and you really have to think and act reflectively as you're making your choices. Then the student avatar will respond with their voice, their body language, and even their facial gesture. And you will also get feedback from your virtual coach. So it's all in there and operating on many levels. And it's one of the big advantages of online training versus face-to-face role play is that you're role playing against a very realistic, very skilled virtual human who's been trained to do this.
And Jennifer,
so,
our teachers really liked the coach, so and they found it amusing. So one thing I would add is that we do a lot of online training. I think Rachel mentioned that you have to do your online training that's about how to report a kid who has child abuse, and you have to all of those kind of, which tend to be just PowerPoints that you run through, and we have found that our people run through them and they are doing many other things while the thing is running on the computer. This doesn't advance until you answer the questions, and so you are captively engaged, if you will. But in addition to that, the coach, one of the questions early on is something like, do you want to talk to the kid during class? Do you want to talk to the kid after class? Do you want to talk to the kid after school? And if you choose during class, a little coach comes up and says, you may not have the confidentiality or the time to carefully address the issues that you wish to discuss at this point. So our teachers liked that sort of, I knew more than a few who tried the different options to see what the coach would say or to see what the response would be from the avatar for the kids. So they found it to be very lifelike and very engaging. Yeah, and I would say the other beautiful thing is the undo button. So as we would all like to be able to suck those words that we just uttered back into our mouths, in this case you can really do that. And even if you make a good selection, you might say, oh, well, there were some other choices I would have liked to see how that played out. You can undo your choice, you can go back, you can try other strategies. I have to say, I find it absolutely the most compelling in the LGBT simulation, because there is, we may be in a post-gender world now, but I don't think so. And I think a lot of people have a lot of privacy concerns and stigma, and it's really a safe
place to try things out. So I would encourage you all to do that when we send this around. Another question coming in around PBIS, and I think I don't know who wants to answer this. I know you're both highly qualified. How would you suggest I weave Kognito simulations into our implementation of PBIS in our districts? We just started PBIS. MaryAnn, Rachel.
Rachel, it sounded like you were doing that as part of your grant, so why don't you go ahead and take that one?
We are. So one of the frameworks that we're using to guide our implementation of PBIS here in Middletown is something called the ISF, which is the Interconnected Systems Framework. And what it does is you're speaking the same language about how you tier your behavioral health supports and your mental health supports in the same school building. So you're not duplicating efforts, and so that you're kind of talking to one another in the school building. So we did this the same year as implementation of our Tier 1 PBIS efforts. So it seems like a natural fit that we were talking about all of these school-wide strategies, the classroom level, the whole school level, and to also be doing such a universal training that's really meant to be that first step to prevent and to intervene early on the mental health side of things. So that conversation really lent itself nicely, that we weren't yet focused on building on the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 supports. We were talking about what all staff need to be doing in a system to support student behavior and support student mental health. So the two went hand in hand when we framed it that way.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. There's another question that I want to address to, it's gone off my screen, about retraining and ensuring that new people get training. So MaryAnn, I think that's for you. How are you proposing to target the new staff, and what is your plan in terms of refreshers?
So we have a system that we worked with Kognito to make sure we could capture everyone who was being trained. So we have a system we call MyPLT, which is a transcript of all the trainings that teachers have participated in. And normally, if it was a professional development I was offering, when they registered to take the professional development, it would put them into that system, and I would go through and mark them as complete when the professional development was completed, and then that creates within the teacher's view a transcript that they can print out and they can give to their principal or whomever when they're getting recertified. I should add, we don't in Virginia have teachers unions because we're a right-to-work state. So we don't have some of the systems that the rest of you would have in place for some of these things. So when our school system is saying that something is required, it's typically becomes part of your recertification for the state. In other words, it's something that you can use as part of the credits that you use for recertification for the state. So within that system, we can also, and we did this when we said we needed everybody trained, we can go in and ask who hasn't done the training, and we get a list that we can then send to principals saying, in your building, these are the 6 people who haven't completed, without trying to mix and match who has completed and figure it out ourselves. So we're able to search for that by query. So in the coming year, we will, and that system, that database system, it doesn't matter whether you move from school to school within Fairfax County Public Schools, it automatically updates and follows you. So for our retraining, we will simply again send out to principals saying, and I will probably do it very soon, saying as you're planning for new teacher induction in the fall, Kognito is going to be one of the requirements for new teacher induction. Again, they will have the whole first semester, and you can tell them to do it whenever you want to tell them to do it, but realize that that's one of the pieces of things that they need to get done. In terms of refresher, we have simply, at this point, left it open. The teachers have been so positive to it that, as Rachel said, we have simply said to them, this is wonderful, guess what? You can go back in and refresh anytime you'd like to. and they are doing that with some regularity by themselves without a mandate to do that. And we don't really have a plan right now to sort of mandate refresher training every so many years or anything, because at this point it's sort of become part of the culture and part of the conversations that people are having. And I feel like the interactions that they are then having with their psychologists and social workers at their building as we do sort of our normal series of trainings will be sufficient. We just wanted to be sure everybody had the same base level or ground level of training. And that's where Kognito really helped us.
Yeah, thank you, MaryAnn. There's a couple more questions that I want to make sure we get to, and then we're going to be very cognizant of the time. So we're coming up on the end of our hour. The name of the Kognito training that meets the state suicide prevention legislation requirement in Texas is the at-risk training. And again, those are free in Texas if you happen to be there. Also, if you happen to be a teacher in training in Texas, Texas has been very, very generous with funding from the Department of State Health Services in making all of these programs available to educators. And this year we've really, because they have new legislation, have really seen a huge uptake in the training usage. I want to really quickly mention the states where this is available statewide. If you happen to be in one of these states, and I don't have them in alphabetical order, so please forgive me. Currently, you have free access to this in Ohio, Maryland, Oregon, Illinois, the District of Columbia, Iowa, Hawaii, Texas, and Nebraska. If you are in California, that is a statewide contract that went away with phase 1 of the Cal Mesa funding, but I would encourage you to find out about pricing for that right away, because we're running an end of fiscal year special. So we are very excited about being able to continue to make that available in California at a really at some really interesting price points. And similarly in Illinois, you have until the end of June, but if you want to take some of the end of your fiscal year money and pay it forward to 2016-17 or beyond, we'd be very happy to talk to you about how that works. I also want to call out folks in the state of Nebraska. So Nebraska was really an extraordinarily busy state. They got suicide prevention training mandated in the state. At the same time, they had a perfect storm of having funding from SAMHSA to do suicide prevention work for youth, and they managed within the span of about 3 months to train every single educator in Nebraska from kindergarten through high school using the 3 at-risk programs. So it sends interagency cooperation shivers up my spine to say it, but it's true. Let me see if there are any more before we let you go. I think that about wraps the questions for us. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to send them along, and you have all, oh, you don't have our contact information there. Our contact information will be on the email, the thank you email that you receive, along with the link to the slides, the recording, and something else I promised you, a demo. And I do encourage everybody to get a hands-on experience of the program. And I think we're at the end of our hour, so on behalf of all of us, I want to really thank everybody who's joined the call for taking the time to learn about the experiences in Fairfax and Middletown, and a special, special thank you to MaryAnn and Rachel for joining the call. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.